Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm going to call to order the Newberg Dundee Public Schools Budget Committee meeting for April 7, 2026. And Nathan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Here's what we're going to do today. There's an agenda in your packet, but we're going to start out with introductions. And what I'd like you to do is tell us who you are, what zone you're in, and something that you enjoy about the change to the spring season. That's something uplifting, right? Hopefully. So I'll start so you guys have some time to think. Nate Rodell, I'm the Chief Finance Officer for Newberg Schools. And my favorite thing about the change to spring, it's going to sound really weird, is when I get to kill all the moss and thatch my grass and then it comes back greener. Like something about that. I just enjoy it. I don't know what it is, but that's my spring. Lovely.
Dave Parker, Superintendent. I was just talking about it. My favorite thing about spring is getting out on my bike and beginning to ride. So that's my fun thing.
Greg Cascella, Budget Committee member from Zone 6. I feel like all the things I associate with spring, I don't really do anymore. So it's kind of a little depressing with this question. But I used to say things like baseball, softball, fishing. Now I don't know.
Andy Byerly, Zone 1. My favorite thing about spring is pulling my sunglasses back out after winter hibernation.
I'm Deb Burkle, Zone 1 Budget Committee member, and I just love planning and prepping for my summer garden. So it's almost time for the major plants to go in, and I'm excited about that.
Judy Croft, I'm Zone 2 for the Budget Committee. My favorite thing about spring is smelling fresh cut grass and somebody else's barbecue.
Hi, I'm Deb Bridges. I'm Zone 2. I have two spring things. One is cutting the beautiful flowers that John plants all year so that I can have beautiful flowers. That's my role, is to cut them. And then I love sleeping with the window open and hearing the frogs at night. That's kind of it feels very springy to me.
Kim Mihailov, Zone 7 Budget Committee. Spring is for me like sports and activities. So I get, soccer one after another and baseball and all those things. So it's fun.
Saul Allen, Zone 7. Baseball season's here. I get the kids out of the house to ride on their bikes, do stuff, and it doesn't get dark at 5 o'clock. So very nice.
Claire Hertz, Budget Committee, Zone 4. And my favorite thing is when the hummingbirds come back.
Celeste Jones, Zone 4. My favorite thing with kids is fishing. We're going to go king salmon fishing in May. My favorite thing without kids is there's a couple of owls nesting on the Getman Loop. So I get to say hi to the owls every day.
Jeremy Hayden, Board Director, Zone 3. I have pretty bad allergies sometimes. So the flowers and the cutting the grass, no. But I just like the longer hours, longer daylight time. So.
Dawn Paulson, I think I'm Zone 3. Budget Committee, just more light. So.
Megan Rogers Darnecki, Budget Committee, Zone 5. And I like planting my vegetable garden.
Aubrey Nichols, School Board, Zone 5. And I also am a gardener. So I've been futzing in the yard. I love to futz.
Great. Thank you. And thank you guys for coming. Just a little bit of orientation here. So the Budget Committee is made up of both board members and Budget Committee. You guys are all equals in this meeting, with the exception of 2 this week. But we had to get confirmed 2 renewals, and we wanted to make sure and get it all straight. So on next Wednesday, or next Tuesday rather, board meeting, we're going to confirm the extension of terms for both Claire and Judy. So only thing we'll be voting on, or on tonight is electing the chair and vice chair. So Judy and Claire will abstain from that vote. But other than that, we'll just be receiving information tonight. So no formal action will be happening at this meeting. So just want to get that. So on our agenda, just to go over that, is we have electing the chair and vice chair. We'll have I'll review an updated budget calendar I'd like you guys to approve, a brief financial update, and then we'll turn it over to Dave to tell us about the budget message. Then I'll go over the budget document. We'll have time for comments and questions that we'll record, and then also public input will be offered if we had anybody that was coming to do that. So what's in front of you? Let's go over that real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Kim, who was the chair last year, just to kind of get us on the three, starting on the election. Sorry, the chair and vice chair after that. So what's in front of you is you have a binder, and in your binder is behind the cover sheet is going to be the calendar we're going to look at. Then the contact information for our board and budget committee is the next one. The next tab in there is going to be the proposed budget. And then the tabs behind that are meeting tabs. So there's a one that says 4/7/26. So that's going to be today's meeting, has our agenda on there. And then a copy of the slides that we're going to review in this meeting. And so that's it. That's it. That's a lot. There's going to be a lot of information you're going to get today. There should be a pen at your spot there. So write down things as they come up, and feel free to ask questions. We may not have all the answers, a lot of detail on the budget, but if I don't have the answer, we'll definitely write it down and have it for you at the next meeting. Okay. So with that, Kim, are you okay getting us going on selecting electing chair and vice chair?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So I guess
We have to take nominations.
we have to take nominations. When it comes to vice chair, we could hold off on assigning that, or we could, specifically say a person once their term is extended, if that's how it is, since we've got Claire and Judy, that will be taken care of next week. So we can go ahead and get a chairperson and then do the vice chair later.
I think we can still vote on them. They just can't vote.
Mhm.
I think that we can vote.
Yes, because we still have a quorum. So, okay. So I'll open up the floor for any nominations for chairperson of the budget committee.
I nominate Kim for chair.
Second.
Are there any other nominations?
Call for the question.
Call for the question?
Vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, motion carries. You're the chair.
Hooray. All right, fantastic.
So we need vice chair.
For vice chair, do we have any nominations?
Anybody want to be vice chair? Would you accept a nomination? Oh, okay. I nominate Claire for vice chair.
Second. You got it.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? All right, so let's call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Fantastic. Okay, so we will appoint Claire as vice chair of the budget committee. And yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Claire. All right, so I'll send it back to Nate.
All right, so in your binder, oops, there's the TV there. There's the revised calendar, and it's the same except something's changed since we put it out. And that is that the district has put out a local option levy that's going to be on the May ballot. And so that changes the process that we're going to do here. So Nathan, you can bring up the PowerPoint. Oh, you got it. Okay. So thank you. Oop. Okay. So basically what the timing is that we had the budget calendar established to have May 26th be our budget hearing to adopt the proposed budget. Now with the levy potentially passing on May 19th, potentially not passing, it's voter choice, we would need to create a different set of appropriations to include both the capacity to receive that money and also the levying the tax itself. So the budget committee does that part. So what we're proposing is that if we find out the levy passes, we're going to change, the 26th to be a third or fourth, depending on how it goes, budget committee meeting where we reconvene, acknowledge the passage of the local option, reset the appropriations and add that tax. So you will be creating that same adopted or approved document again, but including the local option. Now, if it doesn't pass and we go with this proposed budget, there won't be any changes. We'll stick to the schedule. So that's the idea, and that's outlined in the revised budget calendar that you have in there. So what I would be asking is for the budget committee just to approve that change in the calendar.
So just to clarify, you're asking the budget committee to vote on
changing the budget calendar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I mention that my understanding is that the board is the one that approves budget calendars and not the budget committee, but maybe I've got that wrong.
Okay.
No, they do.
Thank you.
I think we'd still like some guidance from this committee on whether that's acceptable. But you're right, the board has to take action on the budget calendar.
So it makes sense for us to have discussion about it then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So my question, I guess, and I think maybe some of us are preview to more information than others at the moment, just because the board versus the committee, is that it's just not going to be appropriations and et cetera. I mean, there are stuff that you're going to be maybe reversing. And so, it's, I just want to make sure the way you described it is kind of clear cut and very, it is maybe very straightforward, but it's just not as simple as appropriations and et cetera, right? We are maybe rolling back stuff, et cetera. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So in the next budget committee meeting, we're going to have a section on the local option process. And I think that's going to be the time, and you're going to get a lot of information tonight too. But that's going to be the time where we go over the local option piece of it. We thought it would be best to have this be what's proposed right now, and then we'll dive into that at the next meeting. And we have a board meeting on the 14th as well. So that would be a time for us to update the budget calendar with the board's approval.
Does anyone remember offhand when elections are certified? At the middle of June? Okay. So my question is, what happens if we don't have clarity about the levy by May 26th? Like, what if it's too close to call?
We'll have to push law basically says we have to certify a budget by June 30th. That's the date that is the hard, but if that happens, Annie, then we'll have to come back and readjust these dates.
Okay.
That's my take.
Yeah. And I guess worst case, we'd have to have a supplemental budget. The issue we have is timing though. We have to get that rate into the counties so that they can levy the tax. So
So is the district wanting us to bring forward the initial budget and then with the election results, either that one would stand? And then after the election, if it were passed, then we would receive a revised budget that would then include the levy.
correct,
And then you'd ask us to approve that.
correct.
So in terms of when I look at this calendar, it looks like very viable. Looks like it's smart. You thought about the different options, thinking them through about what we need to do to have in place legally by June 30th. Even if we don't have certification, if we have a sense that it's going to pass, then it makes sense to go forward, even if the certification takes longer than what, because we also have a timing where we have to publish and do all those pieces. So at some point we'll have to
Make the call.
District will have to make a decision and
Yeah.
and decide when that needs to happen. I mean, and the time frame you set up here allows for that to happen.
Thank you. And we were strategic about coming to this proposed budget with anticipation of it potentially passing. So we won't be starting from scratch if it passes. So we've kept content in the system so that we can build that pretty quickly. So
I mean, I don't have an issue with the proposed changes. I think this is good to kind of have this, you know, option A versus option B and have it down. So I'm in favor of the change. I don't have any problems with it. Yeah.
So we can take that
Yeah,
back to the
we'll move-
meeting, get that on the agenda for the Tuesday meeting. Thanks.
okay. Thank you. Oh, it's not working again. There you go. All right. So we did that. And that. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave to go over our budget message.
So tonight I want to orient you to the budget message and the budget document. And I'm just going to tell you right now that it's probably the longest budget message that I've written because it's a very complicated environment right now. And I wanted to make sure I give you a whole picture of kind of what's going on in Oregon. And so I want to encourage you to read it. It's, like I said, it's longer than I've usually written, but there's just a lot going on right now. Today, I'm going to run through a presentation that I think goes through the salient parts of it, but I want to make sure you have some background as to how you begin to look at what's happening in Oregon right now. And then I just want to say there's going to be a lot of information coming at you tonight. And so I just want you to know that Nate and I are here between now and the next meeting or whenever you're doing your homework. Feel free to set up a meeting with us. We're happy to sit down with you, walk you through anything questions that you have. It's just, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. With that, I think we just want to get started. You gonna work it? There's kind of four parts to my presentation tonight. And the first is really this state context, which is there's a lot going on with so many districts having funding problems. This isn't now just a Newberg problem. We'll also talk about some things that are specific to Newberg, but there's a larger context going on here that's creating some of the dynamics that we're feeling right now. And then we'll spend some time talking about the gap. The last time that we were here at the Budget 101, I spent some time talking about kind of that we saw, early October, November, we began to see that there was going to be a gap. And so tonight we want to talk a little bit about what that gap is, what are the drivers of that gap, and then specifically the path forward, which is the reductions, which is how are we going to reduce our budget so that the budget balances. So those are kind of the four things that we're working on tonight. So Friday, as I was getting ready for this presentation, an article came over the Oregonian. And the title of it was Why These Oregon School Districts Are Facing Deep Cuts Despite More State Money, which I thought was a really interesting article. I kind of put down my stuff and spent a little time reading it. A couple of the quotes there that caught me, one after another. School districts from around the metro have announced they too are facing budget deficits. And then the other was these reductions come despite an 11.4% increase in state funding. And so one of the things that I want to do tonight is unpack those statements a little bit because they seem kind of contradictory. But I think it's important that we all kind of understand them to understand what's happening in our budget. At one point in the article, the North Clackamas CFO says, even though state funding's increased, it hasn't kept pace with expenses. And I think that's actually the most important statement that's been made about everything that's going on in Oregon right now. So let's talk about the drivers of the budget. Our budget, there's a couple of things that are driving it right now. The state funding is probably the first and biggest. They don't redo, the next biennium is next spring. So we're not going to see any help from this, but I want to spend some time talking about it because it's a big driver in what's happening right now. And then enrollment, obviously we're losing students. Most districts are losing students, and that enrollment has an impact. It's a little more complex than just you have fewer students, you have less money, but that is a driver in what's happening in our district. The next one is really labor costs. I mean, I think that's a big driver that's been going on. Labor costs, benefits, definitely creating a dynamic for us. Operational costs. And then I just want to leave with unfunded mandates because I don't have numbers for this, but what I can tell you is there are things that are impacting our budgets that are not really in our control. The first one would be paid leave Oregon. And I'm not here to say good or bad on any of these ideas. It's not whether it was a great idea. My big issue is we already have a very good leave plan, and paid leave Oregon stacks on top of it. And so what we're seeing is more folks using leave, which means more subs, less time in the classroom, and none of that was paid for. None of that came with extra money for this leave program. Unemployment by our classified employees during Christmas break, spring break, and summer break. Again, I'm not here to say good or bad. I'm saying that they passed this law that allows them to get unemployment, and the employer is who pays the unemployment. So this is, again, is just more money that isn't going into our classrooms. The last one is a great idea. It's Senate Bill 3 around personal finance. Again, can't think of anything more important for kids, but that additional credit means there's more teachers needed for it. And again, no money came down from the legislature for that. So these are some of the dynamics that I think that we're up against as we begin to figure out how we're going to move forward. I want to spend a little time talking about QEM. I promise I won't go on and on about it, but I think it's important because in 1999, after the passage of Measure 5 and Measure 47, the legislature asked the question. They were trying to figure out, well, educators are always saying that they don't have enough funding. And so the legislature trying to answer the question, well, how much funding do you need? And so they created the QEM, the quality education model. It gets calculated every biennium, and it is some of the numbers that they use. What they basically do is they figure, well, how many kids should we have in K-3 classrooms? How many kids should we have in 4 or 5 classrooms? Those numbers are 20 to 1 K-3, 24 to 1 4-5. It is The secondary schools, it gets a little more because you have to take into account their schedules. But basically it's 27-1 at the middle school and 28-1 in the high school. And those are excellent numbers. And they used the counseling ratio of ASCA, the National Counseling Association's recommendation for counselors. And they take all those numbers and they calculate what it costs to run a quality education system. In this last biennium, it was $13.52 billion, and we were funded at 11.7. And again, there's just a big gap between what they know a quality education system needs and what they're funding at. Go ahead, Nate. Okay, I want to spend a little time on this chart because I think it's important to kind of understand what's happened over the last 20 years. In the blue at the bottom is actually the state school fund funding. And in 2003, it was 4.9 billion. And in 2023-25, it's 11.7. And you can see basically, except for the years like 2009, 10, 11, where we had the huge housing crisis and economy went, basically every year after that, the state funding has gone up. So every biennium after 2011, 13, you have record funding. Because of inflation, every year they're funding more money. That's the nature of it. So when someone says that they have record funding, that's not the driver of whether or not it's the driver is it adequate? And that's the purple line here. This is their calculations of QEM. And as you can see, not once in the these biennium have they actually funded QEM. Now, the other line that's very interesting here is the green line. The green line is the total general fund of the state. And what I want you to notice is the slope of the green line versus the slope of the blue line, which is the funds, the general funds of the state increased rapidly, whereas the state school fund did not increase at the same rate, which is the top line, which is the percentage of the general fund that the state school fund makes up. In 2003-5, it was 45%. This year it is, or in this graph, it's 35%. It sinks lower in this biennium still. So again, I want to put out there that, again, the way in which the state is funding schools is obvious over the 20 years. It is continually getting less of the state general fund than it was before. That's part of this problem. Give me one more, Nate. This graph is, the bar is QEM and the line graph is, the bar is QEM, the line graph is state school fund. And the ones that I want you to look at here, it's pretty much the same graph that you saw, but it's these last two biennium that I think are interesting. In 21-23 is where they get kind of closest to funding QEM. And then what you can see is the bar for 23-25, it's much larger. That comes from the increase in costs after the pandemic. These are benefits, these are salaries, COLAs, but QEM knew that. I mean, they calculated that in, but yet the funding goes basically from this biennium to the next. It does go up, but the bar is still, there's a big gap there. That is why so many school districts right now are struggling. This difference between our increasing costs and the state's funding of that is the problem that we're seeing. And it's why everybody right now is out. Most everybody that I know is out reducing. So now, like I said, the next biennium starts next spring. So there's no change going to happen out of this. But I think that's a really important thing to understand about our funding, is that it's inherently not sufficient to start with. This was the growth in the state general fund. It's 305% from 2003 to this current biennium. At the same time, the education rate is 238. The interesting thing there is if they even kept us at 40% of the state budget, we would be over QEM right now. I mean, that's how much that impacts us. I'll also say all of their money is spent, and it's all spent on valuable things. I'm sure it's healthcare and it's other. So it's like trying to reallocate this is really challenging. We're going to go through that exact exercise as we look at our reductions, because anything that we choose not to do is important. But I still think that this, like acknowledging the fact that they've changed the way that they fund schools over time, I think you have to acknowledge that. This screen, the other thing that kind of I wanted to show with this is that the other thing is the inequity in Oregon. Again, this ability to pass a levy and then to have more funding means that some districts are funding at 12,000 and we're funding at 10,000. And something doesn't feel totally correct about that. But what I do know is that those districts are able to provide more stuff for their kids. So some of the specifics around us. First is enrollment. So this is, I think the last time I showed you a different graph, but I wanted to kind of give you a visual of what it looks like in our district right now. And what you'll see there is that we have 3 classes in the high school right now that are larger, significantly larger. Then we have a series of grades in the middle that are all pretty steady, and then our last kindergarten and first grades have been low. So here's the way that I see this, and here's what I believe is going to happen. Each year for the next 3 years, we're going to have a larger class leaving and a smaller class coming in of some sort, whether it's 300 or whether it's 250 or 280. Well, I don't know yet. We'll find that out. But the interesting thing here is we know we're going to have a drop in enrollment. The interesting thing is where that enrollment's going to drop is at the high school. And at the high school, it's much easier for us to adjust class size and to adjust the number of teachers than it is at the elementary level. And the elementary level has a problem. It's what the first 18 meetings that I did in January was really around this issue of the small cohort, where in our elementary schools, 4 of our schools have 2 or fewer teachers per grade level. And what that means is when a grade levels, the number of kids in a grade level gets to, let's say that you have, the example I use all the time is Joanne Austin, first grade. You have 27 students in the spring. Last year we were staffing at 23-1. With 27 students in that grade level, we allocate 1 teacher. It's a little bit high, but it's not that high. And then over some period of time, 4 kids move in. And now you're at 31. And so you have a choice as a district. We either take and add a teacher, but if we add a teacher, that's not budgeted. So that's coming out of your ending fund balance or the cash on hand. But then your class sizes are 15 and 16. Or you leave it at 31, and now that's first grade class of 31 is going to be a real challenge to teach. So all of our decisions there aren't good. Like we're either 31 or we're 15 or 16. I don't get to make the decision of let's try and make it 24. So that's one of the big challenges that we have if we're losing enrollment at the elementaries. I do think right now, though, where we know we're going to lose kids is at the high school, and that will be easier for us to adjust to over time. We'll continue to manage the number of teachers and staff that we need based on the number of kids. So what we've already done, what you've already done is we've already eliminated over the 2 years, we've done a lot of work. I have an ending fund balance chart coming up here that kind of plays into this, but we've already eliminated 76.75 folks from the organization. We were overstaffed at one point, and bringing that down back in eliminating expenses. We shortened the school year 13 days, 8 days last year, 5 days this year, and it's still going to be a challenge. We've reduced building budgets 20%. We've not been filling positions that were open. If they didn't have to be filled, like a teacher in a classroom, we're going to have to refill that. But other positions, we've looked at not refilling them. So we're doing a lot of work to try and get to this place. Ending fund balance. Again, these are all things that are kind of uniquely Newberg that are impacting our ability to adjust. What you've got here is in 2015 to 2025 in in 2017, we ended with a we had a 2.6% ending fund balance. We forecasted a certain number of kids to come. When September came, we were like 100 kids did not show up. We were already like, because we had a low ending fund balance, we had to riff. So we riffed in September. I think it was, my memory was, it was 30 plus folks that we riffed from the organization. They ended the year at 4.8%. And that's when the board passed a policy that said DBDB, that says you have to have a 7% ending fund balance. For the next 5 years, you have really stable, very excellent ending fund balances of 13, 15, 15, 12, 12. The year 23, 24 is where, again, you burn through, I can't remember the total amount. How much? 8.8 million. Okay. And again, you have Dr. Radich comes in at the end of that spring, and over the summer, they make a riff of, over the 2 years, it's now been 76.75 folks. And you see us begin to rebound. We ended last year at 2.9%, which is still not where we need to be at all, but we were making some growth. Where we're at right now is because of the conditions that we've just been talking about, we're not growing that ending fund balance the way that we need to. And that's really still limiting our ability to adjust to things as they happen. So this ending fund balance and restoring that over time is going to become, it's a incredibly important thing for us. So those were kind of the Newberg specific things. What are the drivers of our budget? A couple of different things. Contractual obligations, it's about more than $3 million worth of increase of COLAs, benefits, public employees retirement system. Our rates are staying the same this year, but we're bringing it up because next year, there's some big things going on. With the end of our PERS obligation bonds, we invested in 2007, and we've been getting investment income from that investment, and we've been using it to pay down our PERS rates. All the school districts in the states, PERS bonds, and in 2027. So all of those rates, everybody that has one of these bonds, which is almost all of the state, there's only about 4 or 5 school districts that don't have these. All of our rates are changing. And so that's something, again, as a budget committee, just to put in the back of your head, because we've got to start planning for the next biennium and what's going to happen in this next period of time. Health benefits, special education. There was a bill in the last spring that they were trying to basically, right now, you get capped at 11%. And so we get a double weight for our special ed students, and they are students with IEPs, and up to 11% were given that weight. All of the students past 11%, we receive no extra funding for. And so that just comes out of our general fund to pay for those things. There was a bill in the legislature that went right to the very end that would have lifted that cap, raised it or lifted it. But again, this is another one of these drivers for us. Our current rate is somewhere around 18. And so there's about 7% that we're not getting weights for. And then the unfunded state mandates. Non-personnel cost drivers for us are student transportation, district utilities, liability insurance has gone up. I mean, again, inflation is real. We've got all of our costs are going up. We cut the school discretionary, but really, you know, that's still, I don't know if that's a driver, but I mean, we've got to cut. If we included it, might be a driver, but go ahead, Nate.
Oh, wait, sorry. Start over.
So I wanted to kind of, and Nate's going to go through the book. This isn't the whole thing, but I wanted to kind of summarize kind of where we're at. The budget's set on $61.3 million in revenue, $61.3 million of expenses, and or ending fund balance. The gap that we see between where we're at right now and where we need to be next year is $5.7 million. That's more than we were expecting. I will say the FTE that we talked about at the last meeting and we've been talking about the whole time, which was 25 licensed and 10 support staff. There'll be 2 administrators in that too. That staff has turned out to be pretty true. It's just the price, the cost of all of it was more than we were expecting. The ending fund balance right now, we have pegged at about $1 million. It kind of depends on where we end up this year, but that's still not growing the way that we want to. It's about 1.6%, and then our ADMW. So I wanted to just kind of lay out the big numbers of kind of where we're at.
Can I interject real quick?
Please.
The ADM you're basing that on, is that where are you, what number are you using for the ADM? Are you using our hold harmless or are you using what you're actually
Yes,
expecting?
this is the hold harmless. Yeah. For next year.
Good question.
Yeah.
If you have questions, go. I know I'm going along, but
So the one quick question, there was a waiver on the board mandate of ending fund balance, and how long was that for?
a
That
year,
waiver?
and then they vote it each year.
Okay, so it's being extended again.
Well, that's what this committee is going to have to propose, and we will have to adopt it or talk about it in the board meeting. So
You go back one slide. I'm just wondering, the ADMW up there doesn't match what's in the budget statement. Says 4429 for the hold harmless.
So that's our current enrollment. This is the prior year hold harmless number. So which page are you on?
Yeah, of either current year or past year, correct? So next year would be
that one.
We're just talking. Oh, okay, I thought we were talking about that number here. No,
Yeah.
Got it.
But good question. Again, that's very confusing, right? The which value are we using?
I guess I still am confused because that says 26-27 general fund proposed budget. This says the 26-27 proposed
Which
budget.
page are you on, Saul?
4. And the little assumption value source box on the bottom right.
Yeah, I'll confirm that in a second. Yeah. I think there's a number missing in that cell, in that box. That 4429 is on page 4. 4429 is our current ADMW, but the hold harmless for this is in the budget is this one. So there's a missing.
I hate to be a pain. I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the hold harmless for next year be this year's number?
Yes. Yes. So let me do this. Let me send you guys the 3 separate numbers that we look at, and I'll send the state school fund thing that was in our last meeting, and then you'll see it in real
Thank
life.
you very much.
Yeah.
So of that $5.7 million gap, we started into a process. because of before we, again, we knew there was a gap coming, so we started doing work around, like, how are we going to be able to make choices about what to reduce? And so we began to work with our administrators to create a set of priorities, a set of values, so that we knew in education, when we get into these reductions, a lot of times we make choices like we cut counseling and we cut things that are up here at the district office. But I wanted to make sure that we actually, if we're going to choose those things, then let's do it for a specific reason. And so we met with administrators and we started talking about, well, even though we're reducing, what are the things that we should still prioritize? What are the things that, even though we're going to have to make some cuts, what do we still want to make sure that we do? So we had kind of two things. I'm sorry, go back. We kind of developed some values of what to protect. And then we also talked about some stop doing, like what are some things with fewer folks? What are the things we were going to look at we're going to stop doing? I do want to say that on the inside page of, I think, your budget document, I placed, I placed this thing right there that kind of has the summary of what that work was. Just wanted you to kind of have the summary of the work so you could kind of see what the questions were. Go ahead. So a couple of things that came up that I felt were important to highlight. The first was kids at the center. Now, again, I'm just going to say, when you're making reductions, it's like everything's going to not improve the organization. Like everything that you're doing kind of takes away from the organization. But still, we wanted to keep at the forefront of our mind, how do we do things that kind of keep kids at the center and trying to make sure we're student safety, belonging, learning, keeping learning in the classroom our highlight. The next thing that came up was early literacy and core instruction. And so it was, even though we're reducing, there's still lots of challenges in our early literacy. And so it was important, as we talked about this, that we not make cuts to early literacy as best we could. Whole child supports came up, which is this issue of mental health and counseling. So that's another thing that you'll see that in going through these, we kind of prioritize those places. Equity and access. And then the last was really relationship and culture. This is a really hard process, but we've actually made a lot of headway in restoring positive cultures in the buildings. And so we're trying to, even though this is going to be a really hard process, and trying to keep that vibe going, because good things are happening in our schools right now. The stop doing, there's kind of a couple of different things that we had there. Narrowing our focus, which is with fewer folks, we need to kind of pick and choose what we're going to put the external programs that we're involved in, and pick and choose kind of what we're doing outside of the classroom. The second was kind of structures, things that dilute our specialists' time. A lot of times we have our reading specialists and our counselors doing other things inside the school, and we really need to kind of get focused on what we need them to be doing more of. So like with the reading specialists, we had them doing some district level kind of coaching and core work. Well, we may need to just get focused on how are they helping kids in their schools. So that was another kind of stop doing for us. Tools or materials that we aren't using, we need to figure out what that is and jettison those things. I'll say that the stop doing was a lot harder than the priorities, because of figuring out what you're not going to do, I think was we weren't as good at that. So in the reductions,
Dave,
yes.
I'm sorry, could you go back a slide?
Yep.
I just want to make sure I understand this. So this slide's a little different than what's in our notebooks, but we're a stop doing theme is to narrow our focus to what matters most.
So what's in your book says districting, correct? Overachiever districting. So those were the administrator words because that's what was written on the poster. So that's what I put in the thing. But then as we got to talking about it this afternoon, trying to present this, we didn't know that folks would understand what we meant by that. But like we get to choose like how over the top or how excellent. You're not going to be excellent at everything. And so like we kind of need to narrow our focus on what we are expecting from folks. That was the topic that we were talking about.
Okay. So this is a thing we do want to do, right?
Yes.
Narrow our focus to what matters
Yes.
most.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. It's kind of a double negative. Sorry.
I'm clear now.
Okay. So we had to go through and start figuring out what we were going to reduce in the organization. And when it's all, we're going to propose to you, I'm going to show them to you, and we're going to go through it right now. Kind of the proposed reductions that we're thinking about. I wanted to kind of summarize it because it's basically in the first round of cuts 2 years ago, it was 15% of the licensed staff, 15% of the administrative staff, and about 12% of the support staff. The proposed cuts that we're about to run in front of you right now, it's 9.1% of the administration, it's 9.4% of the licensed staff, and it's a little less of the classified staff, but a lot of the classified staff are actually written into some of the IEPs. It's a little harder for us to trim in some of those spots. And we'd already also kind of trimmed a lot of those spots in the first cuts. So I want to go through and just walk you through what we're suggesting here. This first one is we've developed a staffing plan. To be honest, we can probably push that out to you. I don't think after we're kind of presenting this, we can show you what it is. It's basically to get to, and this is, it's basically the same staffing plan that we worked out through the boundary committee. K3 is 24.5 to 1. 4-5 is 27 to 1. Middle school is 30. That takes into account their schedule. So 30 is actually what we would expect to see in the classrooms. Kind of. Again, in secondary schools, you have band, which has more kids in it, which means that somewhere else there's a class that has fewer kids in it. So again, in secondary schools, it's harder to kind of pinpoint these average class sizes. And then at the high school, it'd be 33 to 1. And I have those sheets. I'll push those out to you so you can see exactly what that looks like. But that staffing plan with those class sizes is 17.5 classroom teachers. Probably the majority of that comes from the elementary schools. Because of the secondary schools, we've already raised their class sizes in the first cuts. So that's why this is coming out more elementary. But 17.5 would be the recommendations for those class sizes. With fewer teachers, we need fewer sections of PE and music. So this is just adjusting PE and music for the number of teachers that we'll have. There's 1.5 secretaries looking at the buildings and applying a ratio for the amount of secretarial time for the number of students. This is kind of cleaning up those buildings and making sure that they're closer, the elementaries are more closely aligned. We've eliminated in this budget all of our teachers on special assignments here at the district. These folks do super valuable work for us. We have our elementary, well, I'm not going to go into specifics, but we're in this budget to get to $5.7 million. We eliminated all of the supports, all of the licensed teachers who are here at the district office serving our schools in science and the rest. 5 special ed assistants. Some of this will be
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh,
on that?
please.
So do you mean eliminating them altogether or sending them back to being a teacher?
So what happens here is that their position is eliminated, but then we go to and we figure out where everyone's seniority is, and we run through a reduction in force. So for the majority of those folks, they tend to be master teachers, so they're probably going back into to a position in the school district, and they would bump someone else. But I can't. I'm pretty sure that's true, but I don't want to say it specifically. 5 special ed assistants. This is again some classified as we're looking at kind of the number of staff and our IEPs, trying to trim down that staff. Some of this will be through attrition. Some of it could be a reduction in force. Speech language pathologist assistant. This is us kind of reworking some of the duties amongst folks, but we believe we can eliminate a position there. 2.5 English language development staff. This is partly through some changing in the way that we're teaching the actual program model. And then some of it is us, well, all of it actually, 2.5, it's all in kind of changing the models and that we can do it with less FTE. 1.0 out of our technology staff, our folks do great work, but that's it. I mean, again, everybody's got to kind of see some reductions. A 0.5 data specialist. This is, again, someone who's important in the organization, but again, with this, we believe we can trim some. There'll be 2 administrators let go. Not let go, but we will eliminate the positions, and we will go from there. I don't think I'm ready to say exactly where, but we can soon. Central administrators, we're going to have to shift duties because of our TOSAs did a lot of other work. We're going to have to shift duties amongst the central administration to cover ELL, cover everything. ELL, teaching and learning specifically, is going to have to get split, and we're going to have to do some other pieces with folks. Programmatic reductions, we're eliminating. There's some places we were co-teaching in all of our schools. Some of our schools have very small ELD populations. And so we've eliminated the co-teaching model where you had a 1.0 and 1.0. There weren't enough kids. And so we're going to have to go to a model that I don't think is as effective as the co-teaching model, but it makes more sense financially. Eliminate, there's stipends that we have in our contract, lots of different stipends. There's stipends for coaches, there's stipends for, but we don't pay every single one of them. And specifically when we have financial problems, we begin to analyze like which stipends should we not pay. We would have to have, principals would have to take over some of these duties because we couldn't assign them to a staff. I mean, if we're taking, we pay them a stipend to do, like, I'll give you an example here. RTI, which is a staffing of students where we look at their behavior, their academics. We were paying a staffing to a licensed person to organize the meeting. The principals will now have to jump in and do that organization because we're not going to pay the stipend for the licensed person to do that. But we're looking at a series of different stipends. And then we've got maintain 4 furlough days. This was the last thing that we added to our list because we got to a place where we still needed to get to 5.7 and there just wasn't any way for us, we did not feel to go back in and cut more from staff. I think we've already cut. I think it's super critical that we get our kids in school, but I also just ran out of places to make reductions. Discretionary reductions, we still have, on top of what we've already done, we've also reduced, we've looked through budgets and we've continued to cut through business, HR, buildings. We're still going back and making cuts there. So those are the proposed reductions that we're putting out in front. I will say they're not perfect. We had what I can tell you is there's been lots of discussion. I can also tell you, like, here's one that I know we proposed lots of different things and put in front of principals. One of them was to reduce reading specialists. And that's where the value sheet that we just went through came in, because we put that up and principals came back and said, that's not part of our values. We need to figure something else out. You also won't see cuts to counseling. With more kids and higher class sizes, we're going to need more counseling and more folks who can help de-escalate and do some of these things. So lots of thought went into all of these things, but they're all hard. And I know as this, a little bit later tonight, I'm pushing out an email to the whole staff that kind of goes through all of this for everybody and our community, because they're just really hard choices. So,
Quick question, Dave.
yeah, please.
This is more semantics, and I'm not sure if my eyes are deceiving me. Is there black and green text? And if so, why? Is there an explanation of why? Like the staffing reductions, top line through 5.0 special ed assistance, that's black text, but then everything else below it's green text.
No, it should all be black.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanting to clarify.
It wasn't yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? That was a lot of info. I think where am I? I'm at the end, right?
Yep, that's your last one.
Can I just clarify, because I think this is true, the eliminated co-teaching models in most schools on the programmatic is the same as the 2.5 English language development on the staffing reduction?
Yes and no.
Okay.
There's some things we're doing. We're actually moving into a different model with one school. So it's not all of that, but it's some of that.
I have 5 questions.
Sure.
First of all, I want to start with, you did an excellent summary of describing what is happening across the state to the school districts. Newberg is not alone. We are struggling with many others. So it's important for our community to understand that it's not just here. So thank you for taking the time to go into that depth of information. It's important for us to understand that. First thing is a simple question. The TOSAs were pretty much what I was hearing, curricular or instructional, teaching and learning related. Were any of them in any other areas, or were they all in that area?
They were in other areas. So our areas up here would be, we had science TOSAs, CTE kind of, helping elementaries utilize their maker spaces. We had ELD, we had math. I mean, but curricular areas, yeah.
Okay, great. As I'm hearing the redo of the ELD program, understanding how significant the needs are of ELD students in particular, are the number of students also down that would kind of offset? Have we looked at number of students compared to revenue coming in, and are we still on par there, or?
So what I would say is that yes, and I'll get you the exact answer, Claire, because I want to make sure that I say it well. But I will say that the cuts here we're not cutting because we need to cut. We're actually changing programs, and
Sure.
we still have work to do around kind of what is the ELL focus for our district. It needs some refocusing. So there's work to do for us to do in that area, most definitely.
Great, thank you. The furlough days, I noticed I think you're going from 5 to 4.
Yes.
Can we extrapolate from that it will take several years to get back to the other 4?
Under this budget and moving forward, without additional revenue, yes, absolutely. We're challenged without going deeper into the organization itself.
Okay, thank you. And then also same kind of question on the fund balance. I noticed that from last year to this year, we're going down.
Mm.
And so what are we projecting the fund balance be at the end of next year?
So next year, we're projecting 1 million as well.
What percentage?
That's the 1.6 that was
Okay,
on the previous
1.6.
slide. Yeah.
And so are we thinking it's a 5-year plan to get back to 7%?
Well,
With,
if it passes in May, it'd be a lot shorter.
yeah,
But yes, it's going to be a long-term plan to build that back up. The cuts were really deep this year, and so.
so I brought this up last year.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's important that we set targets and goals for how we're going to build that back. And it's okay if we don't meet them every year because the revenue fluctuates, enrollment fluctuates, all those things happen. But I think we should have some targets in our head and how much that is, both dollar-wise and percentage. In 5 years,
Yeah.
it seems like a reasonable amount of time to get back to 7%. So
We have kind of some thoughts about what happens, like if the levy passes, we have a plan set out. Why don't we do the same thing for if it doesn't? I mean, because we are thinking about like plans of how we're going to do this. So why don't we bring that back to the next meeting with both?
great, thank you. And then the last question, this is probably for future years, just a question about the heads up and the dollar amount. With the PERS bonds sunsetting, the discount that we receive in this district for the PERS rate discontinues. So understanding what does that do in the next couple of biennia, and just as a heads up to that it's going to cause another bleep on the radar.
And we had a update to the board.
Okay.
January and February, over two, one about the system and then one about what the future looks like as far as that rate goes.
So maybe just
we can bring that up.
understanding how much that means to us over the next few years.
So
we have that
can I
in
bring that information, just the information from the board meeting to the next one. Would that be helpful?
it's totally up
I mean,
to you
just-
guys to decide. I'm just saying it's something that I think our community needs to know is coming, because it'll be another challenge for us. And if we know when's coming, then I think it's important that we share that information with the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that was the end of my questions.
Good questions. Yeah.
And Claire, thank you for bringing up the long-term planning of 5 years. How close, and this is not reflecting on the state economic coming back and saying the economists at the state level telling us what the picture is. It's bigger than that. I get to take a look at, in my regular role, at what goes on in the state. And are we saying that 5 years is realistic, or is it 7? Businesses are leaving Oregon faster than before, even though we'll get reports saying, oh, it's not that bad. It is. And so do we have a contingency that says if we start to see more businesses leaving Oregon, that totally impacts our tax picture for the state? And should we be looking at a longer run to get to where we need to be? We can say optimistically 5 years, that'd be great. But realistically, should we plan for a 7-year run up or an 8-year run up to get to where we need to be? Because none of us control how fast businesses are going to leave the state.
Why don't we bring that back to you? I mean, I think I don't have an answer because I think, let's do that. Again, go ahead.
I do have a question with like music and PE teachers. For instance, my kids are seeing an increase in the amount of PE time that they're getting at the elementary level this year. That was a change where they've added. And they're seeing impacts in the classroom as well because you get the kids to move and they pay attention better. Is that something where that now like changes back, or was that funding something different?
No, that won't change because that's actually the state law of what kids, how many PE minutes they need to get. So they're getting what the state law requires. What will change, the number up there was with fewer teachers, we need fewer sections. And so we'll be able, they'll trim pieces from the PE teachers who were there. And in most of the cases, we went from 1 to 2 or 1 plus a part-time teacher. So it'll be mostly trying to kind of trim those sections back. But where we went with 150 minutes of PE for elementary students won't change.
Didn't we also have a 2-year grant for PE? Is it
Yeah.
2-year?
There's a grant that pays a portion of those, helping districts kind of get with this. Many districts are still not really implementing that law. And so I will say that your observations are exactly my observations, which is I think it's been a really good thing for kids, for staff, for everyone. If you ever need to feel good, come stand by the side of the Edwards has their outside, and the kids are just having so much fun. It's right outside my office, so I hear it all day long of kids laughing and running, and it's great. So I'm going to turn it over. Like I said, if you're like me, you're going to think about stuff as you're driving home, and I'm around. So please feel free, as if you have questions, bring in your book and we'll sit down and we'll go through it, and we'll do our best to answer your questions. We're going to give you a chance to kind of do some partner talk and to get some questions together for us in a second too. So, but I'm going to turn over to Nate to kind of finish. Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the values-driven approach. That stands out to me, and I appreciate the way that the collaborative nature in which that was done. What I've heard you say is that it was, administrators getting together to name those priorities, even to use those values to push back on some potential. I think that's a sign of a strong organization. So I appreciate that. Another question I have is, can you remind me the cost savings that we realize in a furlough day?
It's about 236,000.
Okay. Okay. And then kind of in the same vein as we've been talking about here in terms of a 5 or a 7-year plan to sort of rebuild that ending fund balance, thinking about if the levy does not pass, hearing that our PERS costs are going to rise, what I'm understanding is we're okay next year, 26, 27, but in 27, 28 is when we're sort of realize that. Do we have a sense of what that looks like compared to the cuts that we're making here? In other words, how much more would that gap be if we were to realize those costs next year instead of 27, 28?
So if we were to make the reductions in anticipation of that next year, well, it'd be essentially, and I can pull this next time, but it'd be essentially a doubling of our current PERS costs. Both the increase in the rate and the loss of the PERS bond nearly make it a double that. And I can pull that number up in a second, but I'll have it by the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out if like the light that I see coming at us is like a train.
It's a train.
Yeah. Okay. 2 trains. Okay.
I will also say there is, I said there's not a response to this until next spring, but with so many districts having this problem, there is a political response here that's going to have to happen. And so whether that's PERS, whether that's just funding, with so many districts cutting, so many cutting this year. They have 2 months left in the year and they're cutting 50 million. Portland Public, that's they've spent 3/4 of their budget already and they're going to try and eke out 50. I don't know how that happens. But there is a political response here too that's going to have to happen in the spring because of so many districts with this issue. There'll be some kind of response.
My last question is, I know in the numerous meetings that you've held in the community, Dave, to provide this information and to talk with families, the number of proposed cuts is amounting to 4.5. That's the number I know you've shared publicly. And I just want to make sure I understand the difference now between the 4.5 and the 5.7. What's led to that increase?
So the 4.5 is the amount that we think we need to restore to get back to where there needs to be reductions. Let me just back up. There needs to be reductions that happen regardless of what happens. And for what we want to be in current service, like what would be right size.
So hang on. So I think there's a couple of things going on in October when we were started to run the boundary committee and we started to figure out, hey, we know we see a gap. So Nate went through and calculated what he thought that gap would be. And we used numbers like average values for licensed staff and average values for different pieces. At the time, we kind of forecasted that it was going to be, we were working through our the class sizes spreadsheets, kind of looking at what we would set class sizes at and then how many staff that would mean. At the time, we thought it was 25 staff and about 10 support folks. Turns out that that's actually exactly where we came out. It's like 25 point, oh, I don't see her here, 25.2, 25.4. I'd have to go back and add it up. But as Nate, in March, they began to really enter all of this into the synergy, into the budget, or iVisions into the budget system. And it began to use our actual values for salaries, for benefits, and the rest. So when we went from kind of the average values that we were using to calculate that gap early on, we started entering in all of the actuals, things, it was more. And like I said, the thing that I thought was interesting was the FTE part of it. Actually, we're right at 25 and right at 10, but the cost of that is now 5 point much more.
Well, wouldn't also the reduction in force always be our least experienced teachers? So
Yeah.
if you're doing an average, that would, the number would need to be adjusted just like you have done, so.
Yeah. But that's why the number changed, Andy. Early on, that was our estimates. And then once we actually started getting in the actual values into our accounting system, that's when it was costing more.
Okay. Good. All right. I just wanted to push this out here. This is back to Saul's question. It's so the forecasted FTE for next year, ADM for next year is the 4,428.99. So that's when we look at our cohorts and then roll it up. That's next year. The hold harmless that's used for funding next year is our current year, which is the 4,561.65. So it's the projected one that was off on that one. So there's your answer. Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Question for you, Nate.
Yeah.
Before we head into this next section, do we want to take a quick break?
Good idea. Yeah, it's been a little over an hour. It's a great idea.
Okay. All right. So,
5-10 minutes is what.
Yeah.
Do we want to come back at 7:30? Is that too long of a break?
Okay, let's come back at 7:30.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I'll head it back to Nate.
All right. Thanks. I want to retract something I said earlier about the PERS rate. So our rate will be doubling. However, there's a discount because we won't have our bonded debt service any longer, which is a payroll rate as well. So we'll have a discount off of whatever that increase rate is. So just wanted to correct that so it won't be a doubling effectively. So, okay. With that, so what we're going to do next is, oops. Click. Okay. We kind of already talked about, Dave covered all this stuff, really, but we just, there were things working against us in the budget. And we did have to make a lot of reductions. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go through kind of the overview of what happened in the funds. And then we're just going to point out a couple of the items that we talked about in the budget document itself. And the reason I think that the budget message is so important, and Dave did a great job with it this year, the most thorough budget message I've ever heard. So good job. But it really, especially this year, is what we translated into this budget document. So it was the things that went in here. So so we can get down into some details if you want. Just know that I don't have it all at the top of my head all at once. So if you said, well, what's this right here? I may not have that answer, but we can definitely get it. So with that, let's go over just the overview of what's going on here. So we're going to go over just the total of all funds, some of the numbers and FTE numbers, our general fund, the other funds, and then we'll have time for questions and then our public input. So this is where you might glaze over, but just blink a couple times and focus in again. Okay, our total of all funds this year is $103,055,088, which is $1 million less than what we adopted last year. The biennium budget is the legislature approves the biennium budget, which we're going to be in the second year of next year. So we know that we're getting a 51% share of that biennium budget. Our PERS rates increased this year, which will be the same into next year from the system itself. We do have Senate Bill, I forgot the number right, 849, I think, which we have a rate relief of 1.6 points, which will not be there next year as well. But we do have that rate relief in this year. So what happened here is where does our revenue come from? Most of our revenue comes from two places, our local property taxes and then the state school fund. Just a quick overview, the state funds schools on an equalization grant, which means that they aim to give every school district about the same total funding per student, pretty much between the property tax and the state school fund. And so when we submit what we're going to get in property taxes, they adjust what they're going to give us from the state to make sure that we're within reasonable target of per pupil funding as the rest of the state. So our property taxes, excuse me, are estimated at 23.6 million next year. We had 4.2% growth last year. We're right about 4 this year, and at this time we're just projecting it'll be 4% as well. That's not assessed value growth. That's assessed value growth and increase in the base as well. So that's how it can get above 3%, which is statutory. Other local revenues that are coming in, about 980,000. Intermediate sources, that's our transit from Willamette ESD for services we don't use from them. If we have leftover funds there, they're willing to transit that to us. So that's mostly what that is. State sources is a state school fund, high cost disability grant. That's what those are. Federal and other, there's 10,000 there. That's really just a placeholder. And then the beginning balance is in there as well to give us capacity. So our total general fund revenues is $61,253,032. I will say this is based on the March 2nd state school fund estimate. There are quite a few things that were incorrect or not in that. So we're supposed to get another one tomorrow, and then we'll have one more before our May adjustment on the 24-25 as well. So so it will update, but this is the framework for how big our budget is. And just as a pictures, because we like pictures, this just shows that our state portion is 56.4% here, and property tax is 38.5. And I wanted to show, supposed to be another chart there that shows last year's, but it's like I didn't get that in there. And then on the other side, the budget has two sides. It has revenues, which defines where the revenue comes in, and then separately the expenditures, to where we break out where that revenue goes. And the state school fund is not prescriptive on how we spend it. It gives us, there's categories that tell us how much we get, but it doesn't necessarily drive how we spend it. So we get to choose that as a local organization. We choose how that money is spent. We try to stay within things like ELL is a great example. We get so much weighting for EL, so we look at how much we spend. It's something we consider. So we break out the expenditures by appropriation level or function level. And this is what you guys are doing in this process, is you're identifying by appropriation how much we can spend in that area. And then if we are unable to spend outside of that appropriation level without the board's revision to that, or if it gets too much, more than 10% by appropriation level, then we have to come back and do a supplemental budget. So our instruction level, we have $34.5 million there. Support services, a little over 26.5, a little over 26.5. Community services, which is kind of surrounding I think it's our welcome center. There's 9,500 there. No facility costs are coming out of the general fund. We have a transfer in there for $20,000. That's a placeholder for the transfer appropriation. That is at some point, and this 20,000 is to make a point, and maybe I blame my food service background, but on the food service side, at some point right now, the way things are going, we may have to subsidize our food service. Not this year, but that fund is not allowed to go into the negative yet. It's an underfunded government program, especially in Oregon. I would probably say 60% of districts in Oregon are subsidizing their food service program. We're not. I don't think we're there this year, but it's definitely on the horizon. So. And then we don't have any contingency budget. I used the ending fund balances distributed throughout the budget to give us capacity, so we're not coming back for budget adjustments all the time. So that's in there.
Nate, could you explain that last sentence a little bit more?
Sure. So in the good old days, Nathan, I'm off. We put capacity in the budget to show our contingency 2% and our ending fund balance 5%. And so that was the placeholder where that was. So I didn't put any budget there. I distributed it throughout the other lines to give us capacity to manage expenses in those appropriation levels. So I didn't pull it out. It's all integrated in the budget.
I'll have a question at the end.
Okay.
Thanks.
Am I working? There we go. Okay, so this is last year. Yes, last year's graph for expenditures by function. And this is, the blue is instruction, 56%. The orange is support services.
Did you skip forward one?
Did I?
Because. Okay.
Oh, what did I say? Okay. And then this year's, just showing again instruction here, I'm going back and forth. So we were at 56, we're at 56.5, and the support is 43.5. So just wanted to show that we're pretty much in line with that year to year here. We break it down by object. So there's different ways that we break down the budget. There's appropriation level, which is our spending authority. And then we break that into expenditure categories, 100s, 200s, 300s, 400s, 500s, 600s, and then contingency transfer 7s and 8s. So salaries are under the 100s. So we have almost 31 million in salaries. Benefits is 17.6. Purchase services, that could be using an agency, that could be using a plumber, that could be having professional development come in. That's what 300s are. That's also where our utilities are, is in our 300s there. Supplies and materials, that could be books, that could be bolts or hammers, that could be paper. That's what shows up in there, almost 1.3 million. Dues and fees, which could be membership fees, could be judgments or taxes come out in there as well. And then contingencies and transfers, there's that $20,000 that we have for food service there again. Just a placeholder, doesn't mean we're going to spend it, it's just there.
Just out of curiosity, which one would curriculum come out of? Would that be 300 or
If
400?
it was a textbook, it'd come out of 400, so it would be a 420.
Thank you.
And actually, e-textbooks and e-materials are also in the 400s. They said they could do that now too. Used to be we always went back and forth between software, or is it a book, or is it a software? And now, since if it's part of an adoption, it all is in the 420s there. This is last year's by object. I didn't have the percentages on last year's, but salaries were 28 million. This year's salaries are 30 million. Benefits were 18.9, and I wanted to point this one out. This year at 17.6. Two things I learned about when I versus budget last year versus this year. Number one is that we have agreements to convert unused benefits into salary, and I did not have that in the budget last year. I didn't have that calculation in there, so we were heavy on the benefits, and then we ended up having to move that budget up into salaries earlier this year. Because of that conversion. It didn't happen in the budget, it happened later. Still was all by appropriation levels, just moved from 200s to 100s. And then also, this number is also lower because as we've reduced FTE, the amount that we pay for insurance is reduced as well. And that's more of a reduction because it's a fixed dollar amount. So that's why that's less than it was last year between the salary, conversion to salary, and then also the reduction in FTE. And then our purchase services is 17%. Supplies and materials is about 2%, and then our dues and fees, 600s is about 1.5%. And that's our general fund. Before I move on, I'll be faster through the special funds. So special revenue funds are managed a little bit differently. These are often grants. They're mostly grants, and we have some donations in here as well. Also, our student body funds happen in here. So what happens on these funds is for the federal grants, we don't have those numbers just yet. So we plan these to be flat year to year, basically flat funded, and then plus any anticipated rollover that if they allow that. So I won't go over these numbers, but what happens throughout the year on the special revenue funds is we have a great system where my friend Nancy over here and Jillian often work together, but when we get the actual numbers on those grants is we sit down and we go through them. I think you guys are meeting monthly right now. Yep. To go through and just ensure that our expenditures are within the areas on that. And so we have capacity in these for grants that come in. A great example was the difference from the Austin Family Foundation grant year to year. Last year at budget time, it looked like if it was good, we'd have about 600,000 to 700,000 there. So we put 600,000 to 700,000 in the budget there. But what actually happened was we ended up having over $1.3 million in donation in the Austin Family Foundation. And so we have some capacity in all the 200 funds that we're able to pull budget in the 200s into that area to allow us to spend that money. And so we manage those on a kind of more a live basis. But the 200 funds budget gives us the capacity to manage that. So, and the federal budget year is different from ours. Our budget year runs from July 1 to June 30th. The federal budget year is from October 1 to September 30th. So we kind of have a mismatch this early in the year about information that we have available for that. But again, we plan for flat on that, and we'll probably be getting more information the next month, would be my guess, about those grants. It's the comparison of where our special revenues come from: 24% federal, 43% state grants. Local grants can be in the form of donations as well. And then we have 15% of that is fund balance. So for example, our student count, associated student body counts, have fund balances that are in there. Our nutrition fund is in there. It has a fund balance as well. So that's cash on hand there. Oops, wrong way.
A question on the local funds. Is that a pretty steady amount year over year?
I've never thought of looking. Most of the local funds are in the form of the ASB accounts, I believe. And then I guess fund balance isn't under that. It's under 5,000s, but yeah, that's mostly our ASB functions are the local revenues there.
Okay. And you think it's pretty steady year over year?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you have a question?
I was just going to say, we're going to have a question. We're going to have an ability to kind of write those questions down, and then we'll answer it all. So when we come back the next time around, we'll have that info for you.
Nate, when it comes, you were talking about the food service stuff, at our next meeting, can you bring some more information on what you're kind of talking about there? Just so we've got a better idea, because I know right now it's like foods, the lunches are being covered and stuff, but I want to understand why you think it might be short.
Oh, you sure? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I'd be
I
happy
actually had
to-
that question too, because I know
Yeah.
we had that grant or whatever that was, I just checked it, actually says we're covered through the 28-29 school year, the community eligibility provision grant. So I'm trying to understand why would we need to supplement if that, or we're getting money for that already.
I'd be happy to bring that to the next meeting.
thank
Yeah.
you.
I love talking lunches.
Oh, food, it brings people together, right? Okay.
Well, we're fortunate to have one of the state's most prominent experts in that area. So
Used to be. I'm a year
Thank you, Nate.
aged now. Thank you. Okay, so other funds that we have that are less exciting, less activity in them, are debt service funds. So we have 4 debt service debts, basically debts that we're paying back. So these funds are their only activity. Well, mostly I'll talk about the energy loan separately, but the only activity is principal and interest payments. So we have our PERS bond, which expires in 2028. Our energy loan, which small scale energy loan expires in 2028. Our general obligation bond, which expires in 2051. And then our Dundee property loan, which is new this year. This one was maturing in June. So we had a balloon payment of 3.4 million. We don't have 3.4 million, so we refinanced that. So this is a new principal and interest payment and a new loan in this fund 304. Little quick tidbit on the energy loan. So when you pay your electric bill, you pay a public purpose charge, and that goes to us. So we get that money, and that's called Senate Bill 1149, or public purpose charge. And we can use that money for energy efficiency projects, which we have over the years. And when we get those projects approved, they basically tell us to release this money to us. Okay, you can use it for X, Y, and Z. And so this debt service fund is our holding account for those funds until we're told we can use them. So included in the budget on this one is a transfer to our CET fund in the case we have expenses that funds. So the activity for the Senate Bill 1149 or public purpose charge funds, if we buy lights, which is probably what it will be, will happen in the capital projects fund, not in this debt service fund. So, but right now this just holds the balance as that money comes in. So it's the holding account. So those are our debt service funds. And then our 400 are our capital funds. We have a few different ones. Last year we talked about potentially moving our bond interest funds to just a general capital projects funds. I talked to our attorneys, and they said they didn't recommend it. They recommended keeping it there because that was the original source. And so we originally had planned to have that happen during this year. When we got the recommendation not to, we said, okay, we'll leave it there. So we still have the bond fund 410, which we have about estimated $2.3 million remaining of interest there. And we have a 5-year plan on that one as far as what we would be using that for to sustain our buildings and other programs too that meet the language of the ballot title. So we have a process for that. Construction excise tax. This one is a fund where when we have new housing or somebody's doing a big investment in their building, they pay a fee per square foot to the city or the county or wherever they're doing it, and we get a piece of that. And so this fund holds that money. And again, we have a small plan for using a small amount of that, but this is something that we're going to when we get to the point of developing our long range facility plan, this is going to be a component of that. So we want to be careful with that money and use it intentionally. And then was somebody say something? Sorry. Oh, that was your bottle. And then we have the Rennie Field grant, and we got that I think in 23 or 22 or 23. And we've been holding on to it, waiting for CPRD to start the project of the Rennie Field. I saw they put up a sign. I was just over there walking around today, and I saw they had a sign up there. We're going to meet with them probably in June to go over how they're going to utilize these funds, because we haven't had communication yet on that. But we'll talk to them about how we can utilize it. The original grant was for $750,000. It's been earning interest, so they have a little bit more in there that they can use, which is kind of nice. I think that's it on that one. Okay, so we've talked a lot. You guys have listened a lot. We've had some questions. So just grab the elbow of the person, well, not physically, just grab the person next to you, and just, if you have any questions that come up, or write those down for us, and then maybe identify some things that you could share that you might want at the next meeting. So so partner up there, twos or threes, if
I think Claire had some.
you want to do your questions first.
No, I think I can just share it with my elbow partner and
Okay.
do it the way you've set it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's take, you want to just go till 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
And then we'll come back and have you guys share your questions. And if you want, someone would be a recorder, that'd be great. Then we can come back with that information next time too. All right? 3, 2, 1, break. Bring it on back. Be ready, Becky? Okay. So my friend Becky over here in the polka dots, she's gonna be taking your questions down. So ready? All right, does anyone want to start us out, or should I pick on people?
So we're gonna popcorn?
You wanna
I
pop-
volunteer, Judy.
Thank you. So can we go after another PERS bond?
Great question. Okay.
So yes, about a year ago, it didn't make any sense, and we were getting feedback from the investment companies. No, but things have changed. Interest rates have dropped. So the state as a whole is undergoing an analysis right now that we became part of, to understand if it would be advantageous going forward. We don't have the information back yet.
Yeah, and there's actually gonna be 3 points in time that they're going to do an analysis for us. So that's where we are participating in that survey. Good question.
Is that all the questions you had? Well, I'm going to volunteer us to go next then. Oh, yeah, you're talking about, so can you just give us a heads up? So we have like several questions or things to talk about. So you said like the state fund, you're supposed to get a new update tomorrow, some new calculations. So how is that like, how's that gonna, how are you gonna communicate that to us? And are we gonna expect a difference than the whole budgets like next meeting, or what's happening there? So
No, I think just to know that the number is going to change, but this is what we're budgeting on was based on this estimate.
okay.
So we're not going to change the budget after that unless it was like considerable. I don't know what the change will be. We won't know until it comes out, but we have to put a line in the sand as far as what we're going to use. And so this proposed budget is what we're proposing to use.
But we'll report out to the committee kind of over the next 6 weeks, kind of what's happening at the state level, because there are things that will come out and we'll communicate to the budget committee about that.
Okay, the pie graphs of slide 37, 38, you had this year's general fund expenditures versus next year's, specifically the salaries. You're almost increasing 2 million, but we're reducing staff. So why is specifically salaries going up by that much if we're reduction of staff?
We'll develop it.
Yeah, we'll
We'll come back
the
to that.
analysis. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, we should have had it all in one piece of paper, but we're. Oh, yeah, we want to just, we know you probably don't have it, so come back next time, it'd be great. So regarding the special education, like reimbursements or whatever, we're capped 11 and we're roughly around 18. So what is the financial impact of that 7%?
Mhm.
Is that it? I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm done. Yes.
First thing is, probably have the oldest eyes in the room, from looking at computer screens for 40 years. So I need the electronic version of the presentation. If we could get those at the beginning of the meetings instead of after the meetings, it would be more meaningful for me to be able to read the little bubbles that you've so carefully presented to us. The second thing is, beginning fund balance is expected to be estimated, projected, which is, we know that actual is always different. But if it's less or more, what is the plan? So for instance, if there's a large May adjustment in state school fund because overall enrollment is down across the state and everyone gets more. What is the plan for that money? Okay, and how are you going to prioritize how that money's spent? Or if it's the other way around and we have spent more than we estimated and projected and our fund balance is less, what is our plan for making up for that next year? And I don't know that we're going to have all those answers right now, but I want to plant a seed to start thinking about that now because we know there's going to be adjustments to be made over the summer.
Yep.
Okay. Contingency. When I see beginning fund balance has $1 million and contingency is 0, my question is then your expenditures are going to be more than your revenues. Okay, because you don't have anything left to set aside to maintain that beginning fund balance of 1 million at the beginning. So for instance, when we have 1 million beginning fund balance, 61 plus revenue, 61 minus expenditures equals 0 contingency, that allows you to spend your fund balance down to having nothing left. Now, I know that you're going to have some underspend somewhere, but at the same time, what's tracking higher with the inflationary costs that everyone is living with? But so it makes me nervous to see a beginning fund balance larger than either a contingency or ending fund balance because it allows you to spend more than you're receiving that year. And that is a way to spiral down into a big problem.
So it keeps me up at night too.
So I don't know if that's a question. That's more just
No, I think that's
a thing to
question,
think
so
about. Yeah.
Let us do some work on that and we'll come
Okay.
back with some thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. $20,000 transfer expense in general fund. I haven't gone through the detail yet, so I'm not sure if there's a $20,000 revenue item in another fund to balance that out because I can't see it in your summaries in the presentation.
It's in the food service fund.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
what they were talking
Yeah.
about. Okay, great. I just didn't see it in the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. I just was gonna make one request, and that is I had a partner here who was willing to explain some of the acronyms to me. It was fantastic, but I might save us time if you just define them the first time you use them.
Okay. Which one did I say?
The one I got, she explained to me
Oh,
was what ADMW and hold
Oh.
harmless meant.
Okay. No, good reminder.
But I think in Dave's section too, the COLA, I mean, there's anytime you use an acronym, I whisper to people because they don't know. Thank you. And even if you write it in the slide and you just use the acronym, that works too.
Just
I had same question that Jeremy had about salaries. I am also I'm trying to look at the scattergram of FTE to cost, and I believe there's some errors on the cost page. I could be mistaken. Specifically the BA plus 75 MA for step 1. I don't think that works out at 5 FTE, that it's 222,000, or else there'd be, I believe you'd pay less for the BA plus 75 MA than you would for just the BA on average. So I don't know if that's all correct in there, but I just wanted to
What
check
page
with
are
that.
you on?
Sorry, page 12. And I think I'm reading that right, that's supposed to be like the overall cost and that's the FTE.
Yeah, I think something's off a cell there. Yeah.
Just because I was trying to figure out, I understand with the salaries that we're getting rid of the lower salaried people. It just still is hard for me to wrap my brain around that we would have more salaries even after COLA and everything. And then Kim.
I had questions on food services, and I think I would like a presentation or something from that to kind of understand where they're at. We don't talk a lot about food services. We haven't for a while. So I have questions. My kids come home and talk about the lunch.
Okay.
So I just kind of want to understand it a little bit more, and then that will help kind of flesh out kind of costs versus, like the grant funding and kind of where that imbalance is at.
Sure. So specifically, when your kids come home, are you talking about like what they're being served, or what kind of?
So when I first came on the budget committee, there was some goals and plans with the Edwards remodel on, like what they wanted to do with the central kitchen and pushing stuff out to smaller schools, utilizing some of the refrigerator trucks to try and kind of give better impact and give better foods and options to those kids, and especially smaller schools where you don't have as much staff to be able to implement some of that stuff. So that was great kind of forward thinking. My kids are not that impressed. I mean, so what they're coming home and talking to me about, it makes me kind of wonder what's going on, and what are we seeing cost wise? Because we see what's happening at the grocery store. Is that directly what's happening in food services, or is it something else? I just kind of want to understand more.
I wonder if part of that might be a separate conversation from the budget committee. I'm just putting that out there that we could do that. We could definitely go through how they're funded,
Right.
and the rules of how it works. But I'd be happy to have, or if the board wanted a presentation, maybe. I'm just trying not to, muddle the work, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's more of kind of expanding on what you had said about, setting aside funds to supplement that. And it's like, okay, tell me more.
Okay, got it.
On that same note, yes. As for outside of the budget committee, I do think that'd be something that probably would help in general.
Mhm.
Are you guys done? Our conversation really, I wouldn't say is questions for next time. We were just sort of thinking out there into the future, in light of the reductions and the cuts that we're doing. So looking forward, we'd like to know if there are any unused services from the ESD that we would be able to take advantage of, specifically helping like the language learner population or migrant population, if there's services out there that we can take advantage of, knowing that we are going to have to diminish those programs here. And then we also had a discussion about grants, and just a little bit more awareness of what kind of grants we are actually going out for. Are those competitive grants, or are they grants that, if we're able to apply, we typically get? And is there a missed opportunity? I mean, obviously we need more time and people, and that is hard. But are there more grants out there that we should be thinking about? Did I cover it all? I think so.
I'll start with our group, which is very similar to that. We just raised the question of, is there a way to raise revenue? And we recognize with that big question mark, it might be so minuscule, pennies on the dollar, that it's not worth it. And B, it adds a lot of more person power to do that work. But we brainstormed in grant areas. Are there grants available? Like you said, we brainstormed advocating and lobbying at the state level for funds in the next biennium. And we had the question as well about there has been decline in enrollment because of population, and there has also been folks who have left the district for other reasons. And has there been anything done to bring students back? Because that is a way to raise revenue. Another thing that we talked about, that we'll just leave it how much you want to share next time. This is probably primarily for Dave. There's a lot of noise in the community that if the levy doesn't pass, we're looking at school closures and consolidations. What are you able to share? I've heard you share with us, you don't have to do this now. We've heard you share with us that would not affect next year at all, but are there things that you feel comfortable sharing at this point that would be helpful to address for future planning for the community? And then the last two we had were really around their kind of values questions from the thing at the very beginning. And like Andy said in the meeting, we really are glad that you use the value process. So this doesn't come from a sense of believing you haven't gone with these, but we just want to hear a more full explanation of it. So one of the values is equity and access. So how does that, if that's one of the values, how does that gel with it with the ELD cuts? Just to give a full explanation of how in the process of these difficult cuts, that was the one that was chosen when the positive value is equity and access. And then the last one is maybe just needing some clarification. For Andy and I, our mindset has been that COA, the Shehalem Online Academy, has been a positive revenue thing for the district. And yet it's kind of listed as an example of the values in the stop doing, pause or redesign offerings that pull staffing from core instruction, example raise Shehalem Online K-5 staffing. So just a clarification for us of if COA is a positive or a negative.
So let me go. So I'll bring back more definitive info, but I do want to just talk briefly about what we have done is in all of these reductions, we've already thought about if there were additional revenue, what would come back. And what I can tell you is the people, the 17.5, the people parts, the TOSAs, all of the people parts would come back. But there are still some cuts that still make sense that we would still make. And so I can bring back to you kind of what that looks like and what what we're forecasting the dollar amounts will be because of it's still, but we've already started that work in looking at what would happen with additional revenue. So I can bring that back without a problem. COA is, so I do want to explain because that kind of slipped by me because I might have removed it. But this was, again, as our administrators sat down and we began to brainstorm, these were some of their thoughts around this. I'll tell you that COA does produce revenue and specifically extra revenue that goes into the general fund. And removing the COA program would actually mean that we have to go and cut more. It's slated for a board meeting coming up here where we're going to sit down and talk about this. But the fact of the matter is that we actually need to kind of fix. There was, our teacher left like 2 weeks before school began, and we ended up kind of concentrating COA K-5, and it really wasn't what parents wanted. And so we're fixing that part of it because we actually need that program to be vibrant. And there's a section of our community that it will be really useful for. And they're not always the folks who will come to our brick and mortar school. And so it's again a way for us to meet the needs of some of our folks in our community that aren't currently being met. So we're already off and rolling on kind of fixing those pieces. So it's not something that's slated. And like I said, if it was slated, we'd actually have to cut more because of its currently producing revenue. And then the others, I'll get you answers for on the ELD thing. I do have some thoughts around that, but I'll bring that back.
Greg, are you done? Is your group done? What Greg mentioned actually is something we had, but we forgot to, as I know he just wrote it down. So slide 16 that has the K through 12, 300 for the top 3 grades and then goes all the way down, right? Is there a way, and I don't know if it's available from the other districts or even liked size districts, is there a way to compare if they're seeing the same trends? I mean, holistically, I'm sure they are, but like, do they see And getting to Greg's point is are we still residual from the chaos of the last 3 to 4 years that's specific to our district, or or are they seeing the same trend? And so now we're back to state or national trend, right?
Let me do a little work on that. We have we utilize a tool called comparative analytics that kind of brings a lot of different information around enrollment, test scores, how different salaries of different districts. It allows us to do some district level comparisons. Let me see if I can pull. I know there's some enrollment data in there, so I should be able to pull something back that's kind of more recent. So let me do a little work on that. I should say I'll let Tammy do a little work on that.
I think what we were just wondering is are our trends proportionate to other trends?
Yeah, and I can speak to just one data point from the district that I work for. The proportions are almost exactly the same, down to the class pieces. So there's no way to tell which in that is from the going away, but as far as the high school is the highest, kind of in the middle all the way through, and then basically for us it's kindergarten first and second. Here it's kindergarten and first, very similar.
So as you're doing that analysis, the most difficult part that I might consider is the construction in the community. And if they are not seeing the loss in enrollment, is it because they have additional housing with kids in it? So it is hard to do that apples to apples comparison.
Do we get everybody?
I have one more clarification. I was starting to browse the actual budget. I'm curious about function 1111. It says primary K through 3.
It's a title issue in the system.
Okay.
So we'll
But that would be K5.
It's elementary. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Uh-oh. Not working again, Nathan. There we go.
Nate,
Right. Oh, yes.
I do want to say I really like seeing the by facility, by school sheet. To have that come back, it makes me happy. Thank you.
Good. Yes. Kudos to my assistant Becky, because one of the things I asked her to do was start to recreate. We had to recreate a lot of these things, and so she's been really working hard at creating these nice little snapshots of things. So appreciate you mentioning that.
And I did also thank Becky for the beautiful binders because it makes me happy too.
Organization's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's good.
All right. So what's coming up next? So our next budget committee meeting is May 5th, where we're going to come back with the responses to these questions you guys have raised. Thank you all very much for being thoughtful and for putting this out there. I'm going to jump forward on May 19th. I didn't put it on here. That where it says wild card, that used to say May 19th. May 19th, we have a placeholder for a third meeting if we need it. Last year, we got through that second meeting and the committee determined to approve the budget and set the levies at that time. We can still do that. If you guys don't feel comfortable with that, with the information provided and presented, we can go to that third meeting. May 19th is also the day that votes have to be into the counties. So we'll be watching that very closely that day as well. And again, that's what feeds back into the change in the budget calendar we're talking about. So depending on what happens there, May 26th, if the levy doesn't pass, we would be taking that recommendation or the approval of the budget committee and setting the levies. That would go to the board for adoption on that day. If the levy does pass, that would be the meeting for us to revise those appropriations and the levy setting. And then that budget hearing and adoption would move to the first June meeting, so that we have time to notice for that meeting as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at moving ahead. So we have about a month. And if you guys have questions, we'll email this presentation to you, but yeah, send us an email too if something comes up as you're looking through this. I did want to just really quick, I wanted to touch the document at least once with you guys. So let's just do a couple quick page turns if you're okay. I know you guys are tired. So let's go first to page 87. I just wanted some things we talk about. I just wanted to show you numbers. So on page 87, right in the middle, you can see it starts at 321, 22, 25, 26. So those are our utilities. And underneath the list, it says 300 purchase services. That's the total line for that section of 300s. But just wanted to point out, like when we talk about increases in these utilities, that's where those would show up. And I will note too that not every line is going to show an increase. We did a lot of learning in creating the budget for this year. And so we had to insert capacity for things that may have had more capacity than we needed. So some things were backed up. Also, in this case for maintenance and grounds, we didn't increase their budget in anticipation of this. So they're going to have to absorb some of these increases into other activities or remove activities in the next year to stay within budget. So that's utilities there. Just point that out. And then the columns are the proposed that we have is on the far right before the zeros. And then we have the columns before that are the adopted budget. Then the two columns that begin next to the descriptions, those are our actual expenses from 23, 24, and 24, 25. So that's how you read that there. Going now to page, we're just going to skip around real quick here, to page 94, just to show you what where you would see a personnel change. On the text side, if you go down below the dashed line where it says class salaries, you can the FTE means a full-time equivalent. So a 1.0 is someone that works 8 hours a day. So that's pretty much what that means. And that different staff have different calendars, but that doesn't reflect in here except on the salary itself. You can see the change in the 25-26 budget FTE from 5 to the proposed FTE to 4. So if you were looking at changes in personnel costs as you go through this document, you'll see that in the FTE column. And not all folks are 1.0s. We have folks that are 3.75s. We have folks that are 4s. We have folks that are all different pieces, and depending on funding as well, where if they're funded in multiple places, it'll be pieces of an FTE. So we have a lot of this. Okay, there's that example. Now we're going to jump to, well, no, we're going to go to that one. We'll skip that one. Sorry. Let's go to page 156. So this is an example of one of our special revenues or our grants. So the 200s are all of our special revenues. And actually, if you go back a page, you can see that Fund 239 is IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So there are titles on most of these that actually you and Google could figure out sometimes too if it's truncated. Like SIA is the Student Investment Account. And so 251 and 252 are what we call our integrated guidance grants, which are when Dave showed that graph with the funding, where it splits. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Zoom, 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 zoom. Made a lot more slides than I remember. Right there where it splits, the line splits, that's where that funding starts. So we have the state school fund and the integrated guidance grants, that's where that happens. So 251 and 252 are two of those. And then one of them is very small and the other one is included in Fund 260, which is kind of a fund for a lot of small grants. So that one's included in that one. That Department of Ed actually required that we call out a student investment account and high school success into these funds. That's why they're separate. So as an example, that's where those are at. Two more spots and then I'll be done. So going to page 200 and 3. So if you wanted to know about what we have, what our debt schedule is, the things that we're paying principal and interest payments on, there's some pages in here that show what that obligation is on principal and interest for all of our debt there. And then if you go to, say, page 208, 207, 208, that 301 is our PERS bond. So that would be that specific debt is what we have there. And then lastly, just since we're in debt service, I wanted to just call out Fund 302. So this is an example of a transfer. So on page 210, you can see on the expenditure side where it says total function 5,200 transfers of funds in the middle. That's that 250,000 that we talked about potentially transferring into 410. Or maybe I did 415. Oh, sorry, it's in 415, so I moved it into construction excise tax. You can see that transfer in on page 224 under 5,200, that 250,000 right there. 224. So for every transfer out, it has to be a transfer in, etc. So that was, there's some things to have you at least look at the numbers in here, try and get a sense of, yeah, Deborah.
I have a quick question on page 227. That's the Rennie Improvement Grant.
Yep.
It's not Rennie Park, it's Rennie Field.
Oh.
Is there,
Change
can we take park out of there, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, we can.
I would be very happy with that.
We can change that.
Yeah,
220.
227. Yeah, just I think the heading of it. Nope.
So, only because I'm always looking for ways to save money. Is there a reason why the electricity, is budgeted lower?
So the budget, this was a good year this year. So electricity, utilities are up and down every year. Like we had a really mild winter. But we budgeted higher last year. So with all the cuts, we got everything is close to the bone. Let's put it that way. And so we did try to get those more realistically to where we thought they would land. And that's in competition with the rest of that maintenance and upkeep budget as well. And so it's just really tight numbers. And if the expenses do go higher on utilities next year, then they will be expected to stay within their budget area regardless of what happens there. So I don't mean that punitively. It's just where we're at.
So that's to say that the actuals coming in are lower than what was adopted.
Correct. Last year. Yep.
Nate, so this budget, what is the enrollment number it was based on? How many peers?
How many what?
How many kids is it based off of?
So it's based on a weighted ADM number. Oops, sorry, going the wrong way.
Keep going. You're good. That one.
4561 is the weighted enrollment. So we're funded not just on student count, but on what those student attributes might be. So I'll bring a state school fund to the next meeting. We'll have it. Did we put one in the binder, Becky? No.
So the proposed budget is based on the hold harmless number from 25, 26.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Right there. So this is 25, 26 number. The 4428 is what we're projecting for next year. So the state says we're going to fund you on the greater of those two, which is our 4561 number here. Does that answer the question?
And then for that's half of it. So the other half would be, are you projecting enrollment to drop, stay flat? Like,
We are projecting continued enrollment drops. So next year during budget season, we're going to be looking at what this number actually is, and we'll probably have another about 100 kids-ish. We won't know till we see the whites of their eyes, but we looking at that enrollment chart that Dave had there. Zip, 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 zip. Oop. There. As these three grades graduate out, the whites of the eyes, the butts in the seats, we know those are going down. Unless something changes community-wise, where say the housing that's going in over by Joanne Austin, they have a really high student or child rate in those houses, more kids per house than usual. I don't know, but yeah, so we're looking at a lot drop over the next 2 years.
Is that ADMW for 25-26 set now, or will that potentially
It will be
change till the end
it'll
of the
be
year?
updated all the way until a year after.
Okay.
So like we're waiting for updates from the state right now to close out last year.
Okay.
And they're not done.
I have a follow-up question to what Kim was saying, and I understand there's economic demographics at play, but is there any data that has been correlated with preschool and how that converts to your kindergarten numbers to get further in front of it to see what are preschool numbers doing and how does that factor into what comes into your kindergarten level?
Thanks. Okay. All right. So
Could I do one thing, Nate, if you're finished? Could you go forward to the ending fund balance slide? Because I noticed something on that.
this one?
Yes. And honestly, what I noticed and what I want to say is probably less for people in this room than it is for our wider community. I'm hearing things in our wider community that are assigning blame to the current board and the current administration for the downfall as reasons to not vote for the levy. And I'm in a unique spot of being on the district staff in a season where most of the people in this room weren't in the district office. And the way that these things move is such a long-term process that basically what you're doing year to year is you're setting your direction, and then it becomes almost logarithmic of what the effects come from it. So what I noticed on here on this slide that made me want to say something is I was writing all the budget messaging for the high points of those graphs, and those numbers are higher than I remember because what I remember is we had ending fund balance 8, 9, almost 10%. And it clicked on me the reason why that was. We were setting aside a huge amount of the ending fund reserve for PERS. There were 3 things that we were doing in that era to try and swing the needle toward the positive. We recognized enrollment was declining. We recognized there was a huge PERS cliff coming. And we recognized starting in 2020 that there was a lot of federal money coming in, ESSER funds, because of COVID, that were helping us to balance the budget and make our end sheet go well, but that those were going to go away. So I left in 2022, which is where we're at 12.3%. And when I think it was Judy and Kim were the only ones in the budget committee, when they worked on the 22-23 budget, they heard a presentation from our administration about the need to look at those 3 things that were coming. The federal funds were going to go away, enrollment was going to continue to drop, the PERS cliff was coming. And so the plan was for a reduction in staff slowly at that point to be able to ease off the curve. That did not happen, and there was actually an increase in staff. And I want to state very clearly that I made multiple conversations with the previous board to remind them of that and to say, just from what we can see, and we can't see everything, it looks like the hiring is going out of capacity from where the trajectory is going. And those were either ignored or we were told that our numbers are wrong and the current numbers were right. So the reason the cliff falls off so quickly is you have a year where you could use the PERS reserve money for operating funds and be okay. And then the ESSER funds went away and no cuts were made. And that's why there was that gigantic crater. So the work that it takes to come back from that crater is so gigantic. It's not a the reason we are looking at continued cuts this year, even though it seems like it is 2 years past the previous administration, is for how long it takes to deal with those issues. And again, I think I'm speaking to people in this room who are more aware of that. I may be speaking more to the public at this point, but I just want to be crystal clear that the moves that are being made by this current administration that are choosing to make difficult cuts now is a long-term trajectory that will bring benefits down the road, and they cannot happen overnight. So I just felt the need to say that because I know that the people sitting here can't say that. That's not a thing that they can do talking about previous administrations. And I am in kind of a unique position of being able to know what those numbers are and speak to them. And I think, yes, I'll just stop there. And I'm sorry if that was out of line, but I felt the need to say that.
Thank you for saying that, Greg. I appreciate it.
That's all we had for you guys tonight.
One last clarifying question before we close out. We can take the books home so we
Yeah.
can study and ask
Yeah, of
questions.
course.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
current board tactics is like not take stuff home, right?
Yeah.
We leave it. Yes.
Nope. And again, please feel free to call us if there's questions. We're happy to meet with people.
And we also have the budget committee email that if we have questions or something, go ahead and send that over between now and the next meeting. Okay. And I think that's it. Thank you guys, and we are adjourned.
Jeff? 42.